Zai, that's Mark, John and Aaron. We were the second group working with Northside, South Cumminsville. There were two things that actually informed our decisions regarding this, how we looked at this project. One was the history of the area of Cumminsville as a neighborhood, and the other one was the stakeholders, which was, if not as much, but more important to us. And we specifically got to speak to the South Cumminsville community members. To begin with, Northside and South Cumminsville existed as one neighborhood. They were Cumminsville. They weren't separated. Eventually, a certain kind of separation in the kind of people moving in started happening. One of the causal factors for this was the building of the Millway Apartments, which is public housing that happens in South Cumminsville down towards this side. Due to the public housing, there was like a split where Northside became North Cumminsville gained its own identity. They changed themselves to Northside. It became a more quote-unquote bohemian neighborhood. South Cumminsville, on the other hand, is a neighborhood which is far more economically impoverished. It's primarily African American. As I was mentioned to you before, the median groups are either people between 21 and 29 or up to 13 years of age, which means there's a fairly significant amount of young population and lesser so of people who are in their 30s or 40s and certainly much older. The other thing I'd also like to bring to notice is the sorry, I lost my right, and go ahead.
Well, another one of the main divides that actually physically separates the neighborhood was the installation of Interstate 74 in between through Cumminsville, which today serves as pretty much the boundary for the two neighborhoods separating South and North Side. So, judging by the input that we got from our stakeholders, we wanted to look at them both separately and together by creating some connections so they could feed off of each other, but we definitely did not want to merge the neighborhoods. South Cumminsville wanted more economic opportunities, and they wanted opportunities to stand on their own. They didn't want to become Northside or a Northside annex, and Northside wanted more access. That was one thing that they were really looking at. 74 kind of cuts through Northside, but they're redeveloping it to make 74 more accessible from Northside. They seemed a bit, it's actually disorienting to drive in and out of Northside, and they understand that. So that was one of their concerns, and they wanted to remain and continue to grow as the community that they are. So I'll let you guys talk about the framework.
So what we proposed based on these suggestions from the stakeholders was a connection, but also a distinguished identity for each place. We first looked on the Google Maps image, and we saw this empty line of tree line and then empty lots with no houses within this area, and we were like, what was this? So we did some research, and we found that this was a old freight train line running through South Cumminsville and Northside and actually into Spring Grove Cemetery and Winton Place. And we wanted to capitalize on this, so we created a experiential greenway corridor through Northside and South Cumminsville, which would connect the two communities, as well as give people a way to move about that is more accessible, as we are going to have street improvements kind of bridging off of this corridor, which will create easier access to the green spaces that are within the communities, as well as to the MBD of Northside, which is thriving, as all of you know. So we looked first kind of at the nodes in which we were going to start this, and also what was the context of the place. And we found the Mill Creek Restoration Project was building a bike trail along the Mill Creek, and the plan is to start from where the Ohio River meets the Mill Creek all the way up to exit 8 on 75. So this would be a good stretch of bike trail, urban bike trail, for people to come and have some exercise and recreation activities. So we wanted to connect this kind of loop, so to speak, with the bike trail that is proposed through the Mill Creek Restoration Project and our Vandalia corridor, which will create some stimulus into South Cumminsville and some more activity in Northside.
And because we had some printer translation issues with the color, I'm sorry this isn't more clear, so I'll try to make it a little bit clearer for you. These circles are points of access currently that we are going to look at for revitalization and maybe gateway improvements. And this here, this big block is the Mill Creek area, extends down, which is like the greenway that he was talking about with the bike path. And we are also talking about concentrating our industry in this area right here, and any other sort of industrial areas that will be revitalized down here into more of a commercial atmosphere. And this here is also going to be a grocery store.
And currently, basing off of how Northside and South Cumminsville exist, essentially the industrial belt, because of the proximity of the freight lines, is concentrated on this side of Vandalia, which we've set up as an avenue, but it also acts as a natural buffer to the industrial area. And according to the Brookings report, this area is supposed to be developed as a green industrial belt. We, during our framework plan, were slightly skeptical of just the term green industry because it could mean that there'd be large corporations that come in and further then divide up the fabric. So it might just become like a very segregated residential fabric, and due to their different economic statuses, it would work towards gentrifying the area as well. So given that kind of a basis, we decided that if at all industry does come in through this, and it does need certain degrees of revitalization, there should be something like an agro-based ecological industrial park as opposed to many other kinds of green industry that could happen, which might, for example, if you had a green industry based just on solar technology, it needs a skilled labor force, and they would not be employing people from around the community unless it was for really menial jobs. As opposed to that, an agro-based industry we felt might have a greater chance of integrating the community in terms of the kind of employment it provides. And also going off of that, we were very seriously looking into urban farming as a measure to, for one of the reasons that urban farming now has become acceptable at various cross-sections of the society. It's not either just an elitist or non-elitist thing to engage into. So even as far as Vandalia was concerned, we looked at it, dividing it up as an avenue that could have a stretch of urban farming on both sides, have a bike trail running through the center of it. So there's an experience of the community. And eventually, even if that was supposed to be like a light trail that can go through it, connecting it further up, these were some of our issues that we further dealt with.
And these numbers here are the sites that we looked at for further design interventions. This is this poster here, number 1, and these are what we and John. So we'll talk about that.
Should I start? Yeah. Alright, so as you see, that's the area we're looking at. Beekman Avenue runs down that, and it's a fairly important street in South Cumminsville, which is here. That's our proposed, that's Beekman, that's the proposed Vandalia Avenue. We started looking at a stretch which, a site which stretched across from Beekman onwards to Mill Creek. What we were trying to do was, when we looked at the industrial belt that's happening in this region, we realized most of it is of course decrepit now, it's quite some bit of it is abandoned, but it has an interesting architectural character. Most of these industries are late industrial to early modernist. And we felt that it was interesting to be able to revitalize those, so it creates a certain different kind of historic character from that of Northside and adds to the community fabric here, but we are also not making interventions where we're rebuilding things but just reusing them. So we started off with looking at this industry here, which is this one.